Welcome to the eLearning Unlocked podcast. Today we're going to talk about the role of storytelling in effective e-learning. I'm Mariel. I'm here with Julia.
Yeah, hi everyone.
And today we're going to talk a bit about, why storytelling has a role in e-learning, why it's important, and how it can actually make e-learning more effective and more, I would say, powerful, right?
Yeah, I think it's a very good topic to talk about, right? Because people really remember the stories and not facts in the end. I mean, they do remember the facts, but when they are followed by a story, it's better to memorize it, right?
100%. Yeah, so, I think it's really interesting how storytelling kind of really enhances learning. And I think it really goes back to human nature, right? I think people remember stories. I think memories are literally created in your brain through stories. It's I think, why we dream stories, right? So I think it's really interesting. And even ancient civilizations, the way they, remembered their history was through
how they presented the history, right? That was the case with all the drawings, right?
They tell each other stories to remember their heritage.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So I think
not like in writing, like facts. Yeah. Okay, this village was created in this year, right? Yeah, just follow the story, and then you know the outcome of it. You don't necessarily need to remember the details to that extent. So I think it's a very good point. Also, when you're a child, right? It's like, yes, so you really are like flooded with a lot of different stories. So it's very fun and fresh for you to intake knowledge. So I guess even when you're like an adult learner, it's still, you have the core, there for the stories. So I would say the retention, the learning retention based on stories could be really, really high compared to like solid straight facts.
Yeah, and I think that a story can also kind of like place you in a sort of like imaginative scenario where you can then imagine, what actions you should take. So like if we're going to talk about like a retail-based example, like you could have scenario-based learning and you could really use a story to place, the student or the learner in a certain setting and environment, right?
Yeah, exactly. I would say that the word of the podcast would be scenario based, right?
Yes.
Because those kind of scenarios that learners can follow are like normally they are really natural to them, right? To kind of set themselves into this environment and really play the role there. Yeah. And of course you can still incorporate facts and different kind of like items here and there. But if you have it packed in this kind of like story scenario vibe, then you're really delivering the outcome.
No, absolutely. Totally agree. And that's really where you then need to look at like, okay, you have different types of ways of doing it. You can look at like scenario-based learning. You can look at like different case studies and like real life stories. You can look at gamification with like narrative-driven kind of, settings. But all these things, they really boil down to bringing the person into a certain reality and kind of thinking about a certain scenario through a story. So, the first one of the three, the first one, scenario-based learning, we do that quite a bit, I guess. So it's like you can have a lot of fun with that. There's a lot of things you can imagine, like a quiz based on a scenario, or like saying, if you were in this situation, what would you do next? Or these are the things that have happened today in your store. How can you manage the client, or how can you promote the product? So I think that's like a really fun way of just putting the person in someone else's shoes, or in, let's say, in the shoes of their future self, where they're going to be managing a new product and how they can be doing that. And then the second one that's really fun is the case studies and the real life examples.
Yeah, that's for sure. Because with case studies, you can really introduce some facts and solid examples.
Yes.
But then when you follow that with a real life story or like a few case studies that you can compare, then you can see how the concept comes to life, basically, So you're making it much more interesting in the end and more memorable, right?
Yes.
Because then you not only remember the fact about a particular, blouse or jacket, right? But then you really get into details while you have this kind of packaging, right? With the case study, and you really learn how this particular person acted when selling this product, what kind of mistakes they did, what was really nice, etc. And with case studies, you can also introduce a couple of different points of view. So not only from the person,
that's a good one actually.
From the perspective of the person that's selling the product, but you can also have a look at different audiences, like for example, who you address with that particular product.
So you can almost like tell the case study from like 2 points of view, like the clients and like, for example, the employee, or the shop and the client, or different.
There are many layers that you can address with this one. So that's for sure. Real life examples are really nice, and if you combine them with the scenario-based learning, you get the most out of it, I would say.
No, that makes perfect sense. And then there's your favorite topic, of course,
gamification. Yeah, that's for sure.
Especially what's coming.
It's always coming. It's always there, you know. So gamification with narrative-driven modules is really amazing, because then again, I'm like really pushing for that, right? But you introduce the facts, and then you follow that with a little game here and there. Then you really memorize those facts and try to put yourself in this position, and you sort of have this kind of like competitive vibe there as well, you know?
Yeah, I think it's really, really interesting, the gamification with like a narrative-driven module as well, because then you have the advantages that I love of gamification, but you also are putting it in like a storyline. And I think, you know, the most successful games that people really love to play, there's always a story, and in that story, there's then a certain game or quest that they have to do, or they have to win something or answer something. And so I think combining the storytelling side very strongly with the game side, I think is really fun, because of course it's fun to spin a wheel of fortune, or to do something, or to, you know,
place them in some ways, items into the buckets. It's like very simple sort of game, but then you're already presenting the knowledge in a bit of a different light, right?
Yes.
You're really, you know, adding this kind of like interactivity into the learning process,
and the interactivity with the story, right? I think that's the fun part.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, I would say don't be afraid to incorporate the two of them to your e-learning, because actually in the end, it's not that you will have like too much to any kind of interaction as such. This is what makes the e-learning I would say. I know for sure. This is really, really a key point.
So, I think then one thing that's really great to think about is how you can work with those tools to say, okay, I'm going to create some interactive video scenarios, or interactive like branchy scenarios, where either it can be like a still image that you show your team, and you say, look, this is the situation you're in. You could give a little introduction that can be audio introduction or visual, or, you know, reading or anything. And then you can either show them like sort of a playbook by images and say, what would you do here? What would you do there? Do you want to choose the left door or the right door? Or you could even do that with a video scenario. And I think that's a really fun way of then actually like launching those things.
Yeah, exactly. Because then with the different tools available in the market, you can really see and compare what kind of features they include, and how you can utilize them in the process of content creation. And during interactive video, or even like video-based learning, those are really two good points to focus on. Because then you can introduce the story with a little video, and not necessarily coming up with like a complex game style. You just like introduce the story with a video, or an interactive video to choose between two products, or two actions that you need to take. And it's very fun.
And it can be simple. I think that's also where people get sometimes a little bit afraid. Like, I mean, I think you can definitely spend a huge amount of budget creating like a video interactive scenario that you like produce in a studio. But first of all, I think you can keep those more authentic and more simple. They don't need to be like a high budget production. But I also think you can do such fun things even with the simplest, you know, forms of learning. Like say, okay, you're in a city, your cousin texts you from a new number saying, I need you to top up my phone credit because I'm in trouble. Is this like a safe choice to make, or could this be a scam? And then like, what would you write back? You know, choose the message that you would send back. So it's like even very simple, basic scenarios and basic execution. You know, you're in the store, customer comes with this question, what do you do? Like it can be very simple, but if you put a little bit of thought into creating a setting, some kind of idea, I think it just helps really convey then the message. And then you also have an active learning experience where you say, I chose this I made that choice. I now realize that was probably not leading to the best outcome. And there's like an active learning process happening through the storytelling and through, of course, also their interaction with it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you mentioned a very important, let's say, issue that is this kind of like complexity, right? You don't need to go full in to really create complex, scenario-based learning or interactive videos. You start from the basics and you just enjoy it, you know, because then the outcomes will come and you really see the progress that your learners are making, and you can see the analytics basically of your course that you create. But don't be really afraid of, taking this kind of challenge, but starting small. Really, you can do some basics.
Absolutely. No, 100% agree. And I think starting small is a great tip to really like leave everyone with. I mean, really just go and introduce storytelling into your e-learning, start small. And then as you evolve it, you just look at tools that also enable you to do it in an easy way. I mean, this is also why we're adding that to our authoring tool currently, to make sure you can have like easy branch scenarios, with just simple still images. But this is really something I think that you need to find a setting that works for you and your team, where it's actually easy to efficiently produce them and translate them into the different languages that you need. So that is not kind of a once in a year, special occasion.
Yeah.
Introduces storytelling into your e-learning, but ideally that it almost becomes a little bit standardized and work
like
into your exactly.
And we just focused right now on really building the content, so just like a standalone sort of course of this scenario-based and storytelling approach. However, we can even go even deeper and introduce role-based learning paths, right?
Yes.
To really use those little standalone courses that we created, and then prepare a big learning path out of it. Because learning paths could be also based on storytelling, right?
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, that's when you take it to the next level. We could even do like a special episode about that, but then like, storytelling per user flow or per user journey. I think that's also really, really cool.
Yeah, definitely. It's a topic we could tackle when discussing different learning paths and different courses structuring, building. This is like one of my favorite topics to talk about. So I would definitely devote one special episode. Let's do it. This one.
Yeah. I guess just as a wrap up, like a takeaway is try storytelling in your future e-learning content, in your e-learning production.
You won't regret it, for sure. You won't regret it. Yeah. Play with it, test it out, see what works best for your audience and for yourself as well. But really enjoy it.
Yeah, don't overcomplicate it. Keep it simple.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot for listening.
Thanks a lot. See you next time.